must be
green. It must be good.
This is my not so false belief. I don't even believe in anything anymore.
Right.
I'm actually drinking Gator because I already 1 cup of coffee and already had mine.
Okay, so today, low code, is it cool, or you guys want to talk about something else?
That's fine.
Okay, ready? Okay, where did anyone bring instruments?
I was wrong.
Where's your bass, dude? Come on, Rick.
I got things to do. Hey, I'm riding 110 miles a week. That's the good part. Oh, look at that. He's up in his game.
Yeah.
The heavy metal bongo.
I can go get my bass. We'll just take a little bit. I'll get it for next week.
Next week? Okay, but we have to rehearse. Okay, right?
You never rehearse. I don't know how to use this anyway, so I'm just going to hit it like my kids do.
Okay, give me a beat.
Okay. Is that a beat?
Now I know what it feels like when I play.
I think you should just go solo, Leonard. I'm going to mess this up.
Hey, welcome.
Woo!
I'm sure that Zoom blocked all of that out, added its ridiculous face, and it sounded horrible like usual. So, but Dave, when you were playing the heavy metal bongos right there, couldn't hear anything.
Oh.
Here's the weird thing about Zoom. It only allows cowbell through. Watch the previous episodes. Seriously. It's the only friggin' thing that Zoom will pick up or allow to go through.
Facts.
Can you ever have too much cowbell?
Apparently not. Apparently they kind of coded all that stuff into the Zoom algorithm there, Rick. I mean, I know how much you hate the instrument, but surprisingly you have one.
That's right.
Yeah. So this week, low code, no code. And so this topic was suggested to us by Akash Goswami, and he is the founder and CTO of IoT.io. And this kind of came up in a exchange that we were having on LinkedIn. And Rick, you were involved in that. And so I thought it was interesting. And I know that you made the comment that, or at least the counter comment to my response to him, that it would be kind of cool for smart home. But maybe we start off with a discussion around, well, what is no code, low code, which has been pretty prominent in digital discourse lately, right? I mean, there's a lot of people talking about it, and that's the next quote unquote big amazing thing. So what's so amazing about it? What the hell is it?
Well, it's obviously nothing new, right? I mean, we've all seen over the years, depending on what term you want to use, products catered to the citizen developer, right? The non-professional developer to build departmental apps, to build personal apps, that power builder back in the day, right? You know, I would argue, right?
Data window.
Right, and VB even to some extent. I always used to say VB used to let people build bad code at record speed. So, right.
That was me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But you know, so that's one aspect of it, kind of democratizing development. I actually like everything. We try and make it super binary. It's like code or low code. I always prefer to think of it as less code, right? Can you use a product to help you, do some of the stuff faster? Or POCs, right? What's wrong with being able to do a MVP or a disposable app? How many applications can you think of where someone, cranked up a spreadsheet for a intermediate app, just needed something temporarily? So there's a whole community that lets you validate ideas, lets you develop disposable apps where the normal product development lifecycle or trying to get time from your IT team, good luck, right? It's a year backlog. And obviously I have my biases, building a couple lower code platforms over the years, but nevertheless, I think it's not that binary. It's ways to do those two things, do things faster to validate ideas. And secondly, a well-done low-code platform that lets you also write code through extensibility is kind of a best of both worlds.
So is it a surprise that the vast majority of enterprise data seems to be sitting in these Excel spreadsheets with macros and stuff? Right?
A copy of bad data, right? It's already created. Yeah.
But you think about the 90s, you mentioned VB. In parallel, I mean, no doubt about it, I was one of those, weirdos doing VB stuff. And you're right, when the real developers were kicking sand in my face, you could quickly prototype something in Visual Basic in the 90s, and then they'll build the real thing in C++ or whatever afterward. Or, and in the end, the opposite ended up happening.
Right, they stuck.
Yeah, they did. Or Access databases and the ability to build apps inside Access with stuff like that. A lot of people have weird feelings about how all of a sudden there were trillions of little Access databases sitting on network server shares, and IT, it was the scourge of IT in the 90s because they just went everywhere. And, it was actually the beginning of what I would think of as the whole shadow IT thing, because people are like, yeah, I just need to get something done. I don't need a big giant Oracle database that can handle thousands of users. My little work group's good enough,
Remember Fox Pro?
Yeah, I love Fox Pro.
Another one, right? Same.
Yeah, Fox Pro was great. Absolutely. Case tools and things like that in the 90s. Actually, we were headed in a direction, I would say, in the 90s for a while of easier and easier, more productive, reduced amount of code. And then I think it kind of exploded and went the opposite direction when Java came out. All of a sudden it was, if you remember when the first JDKs were coming out, you were back using Notepad or whatever editor, and at the command line, and all of a sudden you went back to writing hard code again, but with a promise of that cross-platform thing. And so you're like, okay, I'll give up on all the awesome productivity that we were just having last week to grind to a halt with Java. This whole low-code, no-code, you're right, it's not new. There's a lot of talk about it lately, but gosh, I've seen it over and over again. I certainly saw different tries at that when I worked at Microsoft. There were so many people advocating for that, for the, like you said, Rick, that citizen developer, that business person, analyst, manager, whatever, who just needs to get something together. And so we've certainly seen a lot of those come along. I also think in terms of kids, I don't know, there was this whole, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hour of Code for kids in schools and everything. Started with this guy, Javi Patari. He was a Microsoft guy who left and started this whole thing and got all these, got President Obama and lots of big people involved. But there was this, the idea of how do we teach kids to code without them having to actually know how to write all the text and everything like that, because really what you really need to teach them is, logic and branching and loops and that kind of stuff. And so the origins of a whole lot of that stuff came from Google. There was something called Blockly, which is the basis of a whole lot of these. It's kind of this JavaScript deal you can run in your browser and connect blocks together. And they're like puzzle pieces. And they only fit a certain way. And so when you saw the Hour of Code, kids could run in a browser, hey, like here's the Frozen game from the movie, make Elsa skate across the ice rink or whatever. And so the kids would use these blocks to do the loops and controller to move around. And it was a great way to kind of get kids thinking logically without having to know how to write Java or C# or whatever.
Yeah, so I want to throw this question to Stephanie and David. So low code, no code, crap code, is that where we're going?
Ladies first.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you guys on the spot. It was just like...
It's okay. I've never been a developer. Basically, all I can remember is QBasic back in college. And I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I mean, I can do some HTML here and there, and I can read code and figure things out. I guess the logic behind that is easy for me. So that's not my background, but I've did a couple of enterprise events, and one of the big drivers around that is because, especially with IoT, is that first things first, a lot of decisions are being made outside of the IT department. And then second, they are, this whole agile movement, wanting to build teams to get things out there and fail fast, right? If they need to. That's a big driver for low code, no code. And then the other thing is if we are moving, everyone talks about big data and data analytics and edge intelligence. We are doing things, and we need to do things so much faster than we need, than we have in the past. So having the capability to do that very easily through your platform, or to manage devices, or to set up some kind of alert on particular endpoint devices or sensor networks, that is what I think is driving this. And then the other thing is, as we figure out what data goes to the cloud versus what data needs to really be managed real time, or that's critical, we need to be able to drag and drop modularly build code. And I think that that's what's driving all of this. And from an enterprise or CIO perspective, there's concerns about the shadow IT and things being done outside of the IT department from a security perspective. But they're starting to embrace the fact that outside of IT, a lot of things are happening, and they're investing in technology all day. And I think that's the big driver behind all of this.
Yeah, and from my view, so definitely also not a coder, because playing Minecraft and having access to a sandbox from Lowcent, that just doesn't count. So let's call it for what it is. However, the low code, no code, crap code, the good of it is that if this being recorded, I'm saying that shadow IT is good. Some shadow IT is good. Because the reality is, you might have a domain expert that really understands the problem on one side of the business that is getting no support from his or her, hierarchy that says, you know what, I'm actually able to do this with these tools of, no code, low code, so I can develop a harmless proof of concept. So I can go and show value. And I'm going to show these guys, like, if this could scale, if the program is helping. So I think there's definitely a good side to that. The bad and actually terrifying, and I don't know that this really happens, but we definitely do not want crap code anywhere near industrial control systems. Please, please, please. To those there's lots of responsible humans, lots of people protecting these systems. So, PSA, if you must do crap code, just stay away from, ICS and SCADA, because we all like our electricity and our nukes not to launch out of command. So that's my view as a non-programmer of why it makes sense. And then obviously in the IoT context, we beat up the platforms the other day. But I think there's some advantages to having low code, no code building blocks that then you can take into something else. So, go from how do I code something to let me go into a microprocessor, something with a modem, and let me build my widget. So it definitely has a place for us in the IoT world.
Yeah, but wouldn't you do it the opposite way? You would use let's say lower level coding, a more of a disciplined approach to coding the foundational components and stuff, and then using low code or no code to avoid crap code.
So what is software, right? We're going to get meta, but software is encapsulated best practices, right? It's stuff that, we want to reuse the building blocks. So you are spot on, Leonard, is those tools embed a lot of that kind of non-crap code, or should, right? Should some crap, but absolutely. And then, right, you're allowing people to deal with a higher level of abstraction. And in theory, one of the theories was like that developing with those higher level platforms would allow other developers to be more interchangeable, right? There's style. Code has style to it, right? We all ever try and read someone else's code, right? It's bizarre. And we have, David, I don't know if you just mentioned Node or
Low scent?
Node, but okay, Node Red, right? In our
Node
world,
Red, yeah.
IoT world is a great example where you can blend a very visual, high-level thing, and if you need to write some code, you can write some code, very extensible. So it's that kind of, or good foundational pieces that are, you get a big community building against it, and then, a different group of people can build on top of that.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, hey, Marc, thanks for joining.
Marc.
How's everything in Spain?
Hey, sorry for being super late. Yeah, everything is good. It's super hot here. Summer already arrived.
It looks like Rob and I aren't going to be allowed to come in and have blackberry mojitos with you anytime soon. That's kind of a bummer. Really sad about that. But hey, Rick, so, in the last episode, we talked about smart homes, and I kind of waxed poetic about how the whole experience as an end user was really horrible. And then you commented that low code would be just absolutely not the thing to do with smart homes. Where are you coming from with that?
Yeah, let me clarify that. So in that context, it's if you're the developer of a smart home device, right? You're made a smart vacuum or light bulbs or whatever. The low-code applications or the low-code platforms tend to be really helpful if, how would I describe this? If it's a very linear application, which a lot of these smart home devices are, they're not trying to solve a complex set of problems. They're typically not even trying to deal with a very heterogeneous set of devices beyond a couple protocols. They kind of lend themselves to traditional code, right? They just do. They're relatively simple problems. That said, when you look at and if this, then that kind of thing, where the reasonably competent owner of some of those devices wants to build some visual macros to stitch them together, yeah, maybe there's some opportunity there. I'm not sure how broadly they get deployed, but I just think the fact that those apps are so fit for purpose and they don't change very much. How often has your any of your home device apps really gotten that changed that much? I use Smart Things, I use Hue, I use Ring, I use Arlo. I've got a whole, maybe that's the problem, right? I got a whole bunch of them, but they just don't change. So they lend themselves to traditional development approaches with traditional development tools. That's my take.
So that's an interesting comment, because Marc, when you and I, when Rob, you and I were on the call last week, we talked about how maybe those linear experiences, as you kind of put it, Rick, are not enough for the smart home, right? There's this whole contextual understanding that's completely lacking, and how do you codify that? Because these systems are so far away from being able to understand you. There has to be sort of a simpler way to stitch together and articulate these, and then quote unquote codify these experiences, right? I totally agree with you. I have a semi-smart home, not so stupid home. Well, no, it's stupid. It's just not dumb. I don't know if that makes sense, but we'll deal with that disconnect later. But I, as a user, want to be able to very easily compose experiences using all these connected devices that are supposedly smart. And I don't know, I kind of thought that's where the low code makes sense, because it's a horrible experience setting these things up. It really sucks.
It is, but let me tie on what something Stephanie said. You need to be able to move that workload where appropriate, right? If it needs to be at the edge, quickly do it. The problem is a lot of these abstraction tools that let you build kind of low-code home automation solutions are cloud-based, and that's wonderful. Except things don't work sometimes, right? Networks go down, lightning hits. I'll give you a funny example. I won't out the company publicly, but one of the early home automation pioneers had an issue where you'd have a sensor and you could build rules and all that stuff, like you detect motion or detect GPS, and it would open your garage door. But what was happening is there was a backup in the cloud, so people would come home garage door wouldn't open. Whatever, I guess it didn't work. Open it the old-fashioned way, go out and run an errand, come back 30 minutes later and the garage door's open because it finally made its way down. Like if things are controlled in my home I would prefer they be edge solutions. You can collect the data. I could have the option to interact with it like I do with my smart lighting remotely and my alarm stuff. But it does come down to some architectural decisions. And we do need to allow non-programmers you don't want to write code, do you, to build those experiences as you describe them?
No, I've been working too hard to get away from coding. So.
No, I would say too is just, it's almost, when I hear low code, no code, I think of fast and easy. I think of not as secure. I think of consumer IoT. I think of things that aren't critical, things that aren't highly secure or need high amount of security. And that's just where we are now. I mean, I'm hoping that as this trend continues, that it does move into more complex systems. At this point in time, I just kind of equate it to something simple, fast, and easy, more consumerized.
As well, the vision that I have is that we have a problem where the digitalization it's trying to get everywhere, and people is illiterate, right? So it's people don't know how to read or write code, so don't know how to put smartness into devices, and this is a problem. And this is a problem that we can solve in different ways. We can solve it teaching people to stop being illiterate, or even children, or creating more tools and more layers. Now, in the history of the computer science, the solution basically for an engineer or a programmer is to build another layer on the top of the previous stack and solve problems. And when that was too old, so building another layer on the top of that. So we are at this moment where we are building layers. So I'm seeing trends on how artificial intelligence can write code. So we don't need more developers, or this type of interfaces like Node-RED that Rick mentioned before. But as well for children, if you want to learn to code, there is this Scratch initiative that it's super incredible. Or even Arduino, that you are coding, but it's almost super simple C code. But actually, I would go towards another direction. I think in the future, people should be able to code, or at least, to interact with machines in a specific way, not just with arrows and boxes. So my point here is we should power people, start powering children and teach them to code.
This 100% ties back to our platform discussion in a way, right? So at each tier in the platform, some things lend themselves more to a lower code solution. And underneath all that stuff is still code, right? It's all just turtles all the way down, right? As the saying used to be. So somebody's writing code somewhere. Yeah. But this whole API-ification of everything, right? And then that can manifest itself in code. That can manifest itself in some visual language. I think that's where you were going, Marc, right? That ability to allow people to compose this stuff together in some way.
Yeah, thinking of Stephanie's point, though, it's almost then, shouldn't it be a responsibility of the platforms that are enabling these low code, no code to be iterating and built upon? Should it be a responsibility for them to effectively exercise some sort of baseline security? Because again, I'm doing low code, no code because I'm messing around with this stuff. I want to do my own smart lighting here, and I think I can do it. Do not leave it up to me to understand securing the physical hardware, the connection to my router, the router's connection to so on and so on. So hopefully that is, probably not being thought out, but, for the sake of the community, provide those tools with some bare bones, basic security, so that when you finish your low code, no code, even crap code, someone is not able to just Google this IP address in, as part of some, I don't know, honeypot or one of these other exercises, and then just break it. Like my will remain unnamed smart plugs that I have here that just never freaking worked.
Great, let me turn them on for you right now.
No, and that's funny actually. If you think about that, what you say, David. Actually, if you want to build a house, you need to hire an architect that's, at least in Spain, that it's registered in the School of Architects, and he or she will sign some papers saying that this house is secure and it's following the laws of the country, etc., right? So and actually this architect can go to the jail if something happens to this building. So actually, what happens on software? Actually, it's the other way around. So anyone can write a bunch of code and pushing this code somewhere, and well, yeah, of course, there are responsibilities at some point on the for a company, but yeah, compare it with you can have the software of a nuclear power station or something like that. So how can you compare that with the architectures, for example?
What's a little side note, I it's got to still be there, but if you look in the Java terms of usage, I think it still specifically says you can't use it for a nuke plant, right?
Right.
And our resident nukie.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when they first came, it was baked in there from the get-go to, CYA, right?
Yeah.
Don't use this for nuclear power plants, life support systems, anything that might be critical and not just for fun.
Right.
Don't use Java. And you're right, it's still in there. Hey, you know what I was thinking? I know a lot of people, there's some people think of smart homes and think of cobbling things together. And then I know a lot of our audience is in the enterprise space or they're in the industrial space and they're doing some really big, serious things with IoT and they're thinking about that no code part. There's folks on this call here that, that have built these platforms, application enablement platforms. And a lot of times I think of a kind of a continuum of kind of hard code to low code. I was getting at, if you're starting down here, let's just pretend this is a microcontroller, even though it's giant. Down here at that device, it might be, it might be some hardcore stuff. Of course, on a Pi, you could put Node.js and high-level languages on it. But let's pretend this was a microcontroller, and it might be C++, and so the average person may not be doing that. You never know. Back to your security thing, also on the device. Make sure that stuff's just outbound only. I don't have things listening ever. So then data is going to go shooting out of this thing and it's going to go to your server. So maybe you've got, this is my server in the cloud here, or it might be the edge thing. And so data is shooting here. And when you build a high scale, loosely coupled system, you want to catch, authenticate, maybe drop in a message queue, that kind of thing. You need to decouple stuff. And then background processes are pulling it out. Maybe they're putting it into a digital twin or whatever. Where I see the no code happening is, for this part that comes after the applications. And so this might even be still hard code, maybe not, it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so, guys on this call, like Mark, on the things, it's JavaScript, right? Is what people are using, which is a great view of less code or easier code or more accessible code to lots of people. That's why you've seen the trend of people trying to use JavaScript everywhere, Node.js and stuff like that, just to keep it simple, versus mixing and matching. And so when I think of people asking about low code and no code, I think of them talking about this end of these application enablement platforms, whether it's on a web browser or on the phone. And no doubt there's that whole API-ification, everything. Hopefully you're building your app, your platform API first, so it's easier. If you want to build a different native UI versus a web UI on top of the whole platform, you can do that. But the more stuff, that more drag and drop, choosing combo boxes, whatever you want to call it, because every step along the way has only certain choices, pathways to go. And so I can either write code for it, or you as a developer of the platform and trying to do low code can say, I know these are the only things you could possibly do, and these are the only possible variables. So I'm going to give you choices so you can point and click your way to getting an outcome, and then you get some beautiful chart or whatever it is on a dashboard or on your phone.
And security, performance, scalability, all that stuff that, you know, if everybody has to take on the burden of developing that. Someone asked me once, you know, why it's sort of a platform or tools thing, but everybody has a finite amount of time and budget to do something, right? Whether it's time is money too, same thing. So if you can spend 80% of the time doing plumbing and 20% doing kind of useful value added, your phone, the part you add on your phone, right? Why not shift that the other way? And that's what low code platforms, all that kind of stuff, in theory, lets you do. You may spend more money on tooling and platforms and stuff like that, but does it get offset by better value creation or faster? Stephanie, I think, hit it right on the head. Faster value creation in many cases.
I want to make sure that something doesn't go unnoticed, and it's that Rob Tiffany, right here live from this call, used a Lando Calrissian cup to show us a server. And I'm going to find a way to put that in a reference architecture presentation this year. I will do that, and I will sneak it in, and I will give you credit, sir. Thank you.
Because you know what? If things go badly for you with your high code or whatever, you don't want to end up in here. Sarlacc, right? It's no bueno.
Yeah,
Things are not good there.
I was going to say, you needed to repeat the first half of your little spiel there, because I was totally distracted. And thank you, David, for bringing that up. That was awesome.
We'll see it in the replay.
Yeah. But hey, I want to throw something out there. So we are talking a lot about coding. What about low test and no tests? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's like most of the apps in the world.
Wanting to sit there and build all this stuff and have, you know, all these abstracted frameworks generate the code, or have AI generate the code, but what about testing, right? Because especially for some of these mission critical IoT applications. You know,
well, in theory, you can count. That's a great point. Can you, but as long as you can count, if you choose your building blocks carefully, you shouldn't need to test all the way down, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to test the application tier, the logic associated with your unique, the complexity goes to Rob pointed out an important middle ground, which is, I guess we would call it low code, but it's more configuration driven, right? Where a lot of the best practices have been built in, and you check the boxes, do the drop down. Yes, this one's left-handed, this one's right-handed, you know, whatever. They're a little trickier to test, but yeah, that's a great point. What do you need to retest? And that could be expensive, right? You're doing building a med device, a connected med device. Someone needs to certify all the way down to the OS. How much of that do you want to be responsible for as the device provider?
Yeah, the only reason why I bring this up is because back in the day when we were using code generators, some of these tools, I don't call them platforms. P word comes up quite a bit. I don't know why, but I consider them tools more than anything else. The thing is the code that was generated was just absolute. I mean, it was literally crap code. Yeah. It was a nice baseline for someone who didn't code well. But what you ended up having to do is restructure the whole thing and change things just because the code was so inefficient. You know, and maybe this no code stuff is going to solve the problem. I doubt it. To your point, Rick, there's an art to coding, right? And when you see code that's been put together by somebody who's just a pure genius, you just go, wow. You know, and it ends up being like a quarter of the size of what you coded. It blows your mind.
In my experience, I don't know what everybody else's, code generation sucks. It just flat out sucks. It's because you lose any round. If you have to tweak it, you've lost the round trip back to whatever magical, tool. Yes, there's a pit of despair. Right. So, but yeah, I mean, unless it's completely unmodified, right? You use it as is. You never touch it. But yeah, I've not had good experiences with that.
Leonard, with the no test or low test, also then the reality is that depends what we're talking about. Because just from a regulatory perspective, there are IoT widgets. So to stick to Rick's comment, a medical device that there will be no such thing as low test, no test, and this thing will make it out to light. It just won't happen. And I know that because on our end, there's a lot of these devices that basically, if I want to put it, in somewhere in an oil field in East Texas, I'm going to have certain certifications that let the customer know that it meets, things have been tested to some extent so that, things don't go haywire. So, which means that the no test, low test has its space, outside of the enterprise, really. Like that's the enterprise would not consume or should not consume a low test, no test.
Smart home.
I wasn't saying that, but whatever.
I could go real bad fast there too.
Oh yeah.
I thought that testing went away when, with your strongly typed programming language, the compiler catches all the errors. Isn't that good enough?
Testing's just a crutch for crappy code, just like documentation. Who's that? Comment? Pick your variable names right. Who needs comments?
Well, on that note, it's time for the refill. Hey, Stephanie, let's see yours.
Oh, that went quick.
No, you got to make a noise too, otherwise Zoom is not gonna.
Oh.
Okay.
This is not an endorsement. There we go. We got a blur.
It's a busy week.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was a wonderful discussion. I'm surprised because I thought low code, no code was going to be really boring. And thanks to Kosh for suggesting the topic. And if you, the listeners, have any comments or thoughts on our little discussion here and what we've kind of opined on the topic of low code, no code, feel free to just make a comment on our LinkedIn. What is it? It's a group, right? LinkedIn group, or on www.iotcoffeetalk.com. And man, I honestly learned a lot from you guys. This is great. I love having these weekly chats with you all. And
Listen to Lando. Listen to Lando.
And don't fall into the pit of Sarlacc.
Just build great APIs and make it easy for kids to build no-code apps on top of your APIs.
And you know what? That this should also apply to coding, right? Diversify. Diversity everywhere.
I was going to ask you what that said because I couldn't read it. My dog wants to make a debut, so give me a minute.
Okay.
Oh, good.
She. Come here.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, wait, I can't see because I only see Rob.
Yeah, I think the dog needs to speak so we can see the dog.
Speak, Mazzy.
What's up, pup?
There it is.
Oh,
Nice.
sweet dog.
That's awesome.
Does your dog has a dog collar connected to the internet?
Right.